Welcome back, guys, to another video here at J-Base Corner. I wanted to start off by saying I am feeling very under the weather. We just did a trip and we just got back, and while it was absolutely phenomenal, it took a beating out of me, let me tell you. Ate too much, spent too much time in the sun. Definitely indulged in the all-inclusive aspects of that trip. I will be posting a video about that as well, so stay tuned to see our trip to Cabo and Dallas for my husband's birthday celebrations. I just really wanted to do something nice for him, and so that's kind of where we were. Came back fully planning on working today, and I was like gung-ho, yes, it's gonna be great, we're gonna get that work done, we're gonna be productive, and then died. So I ended up having to reschedule my patients to Saturday and Sunday. So if you happen to be a patient and you're watching this, thank you for your support, and also I'm very sorry to have rescheduled you. But you don't want me to see you right now anyways. Mild fever, not feeling great, stomach upset, like it's not pretty here at our home. So that being said, I was like, I'm just chilling here anyways, and at this point I have literally probably slept a grand total of 4 hours out of the day, and the plane rides and all that stuff. So I was like, what would be better than to sit and film a nice little video? And so here we are with what I read in the month of July. And this month, guys, was overambitious for me, and I met my overambitious goals. Not because of the fact that I felt a desire to necessarily hit these goals. It was already very overambitious, and I think I mentioned that in the last video that I did where I said this is my TBR for July. But for some reason, this month was just a good reading month. And I think it's because in addition to doing audible and physical reading, many of these books, I split it up, either 20% of physically reading, 80% of audible, or like 50-50, whatever it needed. And then there are a few books that were like pure physical read only, like I did not have it on audible. But one of my other goals has been to walk. And I am, at this point, concerned about my weight. I do want to actually work on getting my physique to where I want it to be. It's not necessarily about the number on the scale. It's more about how I've been feeling. And it's more about the fact that being in medicine, I feel really guilty not feeling healthy while I'm telling patients to be healthy. So I'm like, I'm gonna be a role model for myself. And I don't have this like massive goal of losing ridiculous amounts of weight because I am in my 30s and I want to be kind to myself, but not so kind that I'm actually being mean to myself, if that makes any sense. Like I still want to take care of myself. So I'm trying to do yoga at least 3 times a week because I used to love doing yoga, and I want to walk more. And the goal is to eventually start dancing more because I do have a passion for Bharatanatyam, which I'm classically trained in. It's Indian, South Indian traditional dance, and it's beautiful. It's essentially power aerobics, dance, devotion, everything combined into one, and it also focuses on your breathing. So there's that pranayama in there too. And I haven't danced in 2 years. So my body is not equipped to handle that right now. But that is the goal, to get back into being able to do that and being able to rediscover these passions of mine. So anyways, this long-winded, very pointless introduction was basically to say that with the added time of being able to walk and with having had the day off to rest and relax, I thought it'd be the perfect time to capture this video. For those of you who are new here, thank you so much for joining us today here at J-Base Corner. I do videos every Wednesday and Sunday for every bookish related topic that may be out there. I cover a lot of different genres and kind of just read for fun. It's not about judgment here. It's just about having a good time. I will say there's very limited nonfiction and memoir. So if that is kind of your focus, then I will say I don't hit those particular books as often. I also don't do too much horror, and I don't do too much like dark romance. But outside of that, pretty much anything else is game. And so this month, my vibes was very summery vibes. So I wanted like fast-paced, fun romance. That was kind of the vibe of this month. So if that's something you enjoy, then please stick around, and I'm glad to have you here. For those of you that are coming back and joining us, thank you so much for being here. And without further ado, let's hop into the video. So I had 3 books that were strictly audible, and we'll talk about that. And then I had these 12 books, which was mixed. Oh, it's heavy. That's like weightlifting right there. Oh, shite. Let's not damage anything, shall we? So I'm going to start with the books that I actually did completely on Audible, and I will show you those titles as well. Sorry, my cats are having a little hissy fit out there. I don't know what's going on. But we will deal with that later because it doesn't sound like anyone's crying, so hopefully they're just playing around and having a good time. They're usually pretty good with each other. Oh, sorry. So that was the first book, The Friend Zone. So now this book is by Miss Abby Jimenez. It is a first book that she ever wrote, I believe, first published. And then the other book that I read after that was the Happily Ever After playlist, which was also her second book in that particular series. And then last but not least, we had Life is Too Short, or Life's Too Short by Abby Jimenez. Wow, that lighting is not forgiving, guys. There we go. This weird angle that I have to do here. But that is the third book. And all those three books are also on the title page for this video. So definitely go check that out, and I will list the books in the comments as well. But what can I say about these? Well, I did a full review specific to these three books. So if you are interested in a more in-depth review of those three books, go check out that video. And then I also did another video completely separate from this month and these books in regards to Abby Jimenez with her Part of Your World series. And I can honestly say the Part of Your World series changed my life. I loved those books. Loved those books. I cried. I felt every emotion possible. And in the first book in particular, like Alex's character, her journey in medicine, and then the second book with the doctors and their journey in medicine and their journey in terms of talking to other people. Wow, I'm getting emotional just talking about these books. They are excellent. Loved these books. And I think seeing healthcare workers going through spaces of seeing healthcare workers going through mental strain and stress and pretending like everything is fine in order to get through to the next day, and meeting partners that not only understand those issues but are there to support them through it was a beautiful thing to see. I think that is something that Abby Jimenez does well, and she does do it in this series as well. The first book kind of talks about, again, high stress, high responder situations, which is specifically about firefighters, and that was beautifully done. And then she talks about a woman in the first book, which is a friend zone, where the female protagonist is struggling with various kinds of uterine problems and just feminine problems that are causing her a lot of pain, cystitis, like all kinds of issues. I want to say she had endometriosis, but I'm not 100% sure what the actual diagnosis was. But because of these issues and because of her random bleeds and the physical pain she's going through and the fact that she's constantly hormonal and upset, she gets to a point where she kind of accepts that she may never have a family. Enter in our main character, Josh, who is everything she's looking for, but also happens to be a family guy. And it opens up a very intriguing conversation in terms of their relationship. Now, the thing I struggled with this particular book is the fact that I feel like open conversation was something that was never approached until the very end of the book. And I realize this is done as a literary device in order to create plot, in order to cause tension and all these other things. But quite frankly, it was very hard for me to take the female lead character seriously. I also think her way of approaching a long-term relationship ending and then jumping into a new relationship with Josh was also interesting to read. While I understood her perspective and why she did what she did, especially given the nature of her previous relationship, it was very hard for me to be 100% supportive of this female lead character. But other ways in which I was very impressed with this female character is how strong she is, especially given the amount of judgment she gets from her family. I think the fact that she's a business owner is also very interesting to see. Her loyalty towards her friends was beautiful to see. So there's definitely redeeming qualities in there. And I think the nice thing about this, and the reason I think this is actually a worthwhile quality to this book, is because I feel that a lot of times our female protagonists are either too amazing or too awful. And it's kind of another point that I would bring up in passing about Sarah J. Maas's books. Now, Sarah J. Maas obviously has a huge fan club, myself included. I love everything Sarah J. Maas, like, don't get me wrong. But I will say, Crescent City, a lot of people have a bone to pick with the female protagonist, and it's because she's a bit of a mess. And at first, I did too. But as I continued reading the series, I realized how much depth there is to her character and how much trauma she is overcoming. And I think the characters, the female leads in the Throne of Glass series and ACOTAR series, minus book 5, where she kind of talks about Nesta and her PTSD, I do think that a lot of the female leads are very selfless, giving, wonderful people, but they bury that anger and they put it behind them so easily. And so you're rooting for them and you're 100% there for them because you're like, these are brilliant, beautiful women who deserve all our support. Whereas characters like Nesta and characters like Bryce, they're harder to rally behind because they do have bit of a messiness to them. And that is the same thing with the friend zone and the female character in the friend zone, which is why I still enjoyed the book. Now, that being said, I think Abby Jimenez is a phenomenal writer, and I think her writing has progressively gotten better. But at the same time, friend zone was probably a solid 3 for me. That kind of brings us into the Happy Ever After playlist. Now, that one I think is very interesting because it looks into depression. And I think what made this book solid for me was actually the author's note, because at the end of the book, Abby Jimenez actually wrote an excerpt talking about how she watched a very close friend and family member go through the type of pain and depression that the main character Sloane in this book goes through, and how she has to overcome that loss. And I'm not going to get further into that because it does ruin part of the first book, but it is, again, beautifully written. I think the male lead character is also interesting because she brings in that famous aspect of being a musician, but also this ideology of, like, you have goals that are set in your mind and you have aspirations in your mind. But the question becomes, at what point does personal life become important enough to change the course of your aspirations? And I think that was really beautifully done in this book, and I think watching Sloane grow throughout the book was beautifully seen as well. And I did like Jason's character, so I think that was fun to watch. I think it was also really well done in terms of how the world of fame can be corruptive, and how people you think are there to support you could also backstab you, but the people that you think would backstab you might actually be friends. I think it was really beautiful to see. If you like shows like Nashville, if you like shows about like that fame and that limelight and these characters that are a little twisted, some of the side characters really play into that vibe. And I think, again, very powerful book, very well written. Just, again, didn't quite hit home for me. But again, I think Part of Your World just will hold a special place in my heart because she talks about medical workers. So Happily Ever After for me was a solid like 2.8 to 3 stars. I did like the first one a little bit better than the second book. I think the second book, there were some things that happened that just were not realistic for me, which I struggled with. And then the third book, the final book, which is Life's Too Short, was, I think, my favorite of the 3. It's basically following the story of a woman who has family members that have had ALS and died very young. It is a genetic trait that has mostly been seen in women. She has a very complicated family dynamic, and she has the coolest job. She's a travel blogger who's now grounded at home and may or may not be facing certain things that make her concerned about whether or not she's sick. And then she meets the perfect guy who's living next door. He happens to be the cousin of the main character in the first book, which is how the 3 books tie together. And I will say that I think the way that the family is written, the way that the family dynamics was written, the fact that she has to go through processing her emotions, her grief, her own personal suffering, while also trying to take care of her family, be there for her family, dealing with that family dysfunction was really, really, really beautifully written. And so I think I really enjoyed that aspect. Initially, when I reviewed this book, I think I gave it about a 3 to a 3.5 star. I will say it's probably more of a 4 star for me now because I have thought about it. I have kind of digested it, and I did really enjoy it. But overall, what I'm trying to say is these 3 books are worth the read if you're looking for something fun and fast. That being said, my humble recommendation is always start with an author's early editions first, because typically writing tends to get better over time. Classic example being Jane Austen, of course. Like, we all know that Jane Austen's writing is, memorable for a reason. It's a classic for a reason. She talks so much about society in that time, especially about women. And I think she was one of the powerful role models for that time period that pushed us into the suffrage movement. But what I will say is you can see a very, very significant difference in the attitude, the caricatures of the characters being played in books like Persuasion versus books like Pride and Prejudice. So I do think that there is a beauty to reading books in order. So that being said, definitely start with The Friend Zone and work your way through all 6 of her books if you do plan on reading Abby Jimenez. But solid 3-star reads. Also, I just realized that one set of books took me 16 minutes to talk about, so this is gonna be a long video. Grab your coffee, grab your drink, grab your food, whatever you want to do so you can chill, relax. If it's a morning routine for you, just have me babbling in the background while you're getting ready and taking care of starting your day. If you're at the gym, then power to you, because I know I can be really boring. So I'm very impressed that you can sit here and listen to me while you're working out. But this is going to be a long one, so just wanted to let you guys know. Then I'm going to move directly into book club picks. So this is Dream More by Dolly Parton. This is memoir-esque. It's not quite like a retelling of her story, but it is a lot about her journey and her way of looking at the world and what she would say to others. This book was inspired by being requested to speak at UT for a graduation ceremony by the dean, who Dolly was very close with at the time. And so it's something that was triggered to be written by her speech to that audience. And I think the thing that I loved about this book, like, I'm a little too young to really know Dolly Parton's music. I don't know her that well. I know of her relationship with Miley Cyrus, and I know about Dollytown and Dollywood. Sorry, not Dollytown. And so I know about that kind of stuff. And I know she did a lot with country music, and I know she was very popular and she was big in Nashville, all that kind of stuff. But I don't know too much about her music as a whole, but I think the thing that I found really beautiful is how she felt it was important to give back to the community, how she felt it was super important for her to be able to... What are you doing, you weirdo? Not you guys, I'm talking to the cat. You can't see her. I don't. That little goofbutt right there, my little goofball. This is Minnie, for those who have not seen her before. She's a little nut. But, we'll see if she scales the shelves or not. Anyways, but she talks a lot about giving back to community. She talks a lot about the importance of education and keeping dreams alive. She talks about how, even though she has a certain look, she has certain values that she's always abided. She's never cheated on her husband. She's only had one husband. They've been married for over 30 years. She talks about family values, and she talks about coming from a poor upbringing, but still having the ideology to dream. So I think if you're looking for something fast-paced, fun, but also makes you think a little bit on the purpose of life and your goals and that type of thing, this is definitely worth picking up. It's only 118 pages. It's a quick, fast-paced read. And as you can see, there were things that stuck out to me that I actually tabbed. So this was a fun little book to discuss. Now, being that this is a nonfiction kind of memoir-esque book, I'm not going to rate this because I don't think that I should. It's someone's personal life recountant and telling, and I want to respect that person. So for that reason, I don't really rate these, but I will say that this was a very enjoyable book for me. And this was the book that we discussed with Paper and Glam, which is run by Lisa Marie Landreth. And if you are interested in joining that book club, it's usually the last Thursday of every month. And she is on communities and I believe Patreon. So if you are interested in checking that out, then definitely go look it up. It's a great group of women and community, and it's absolutely lovely. There's no judgment. I am extremely Hindu. They, for a majority of that group, are extremely Christian, and they have been very open to me. We've had open conversations about culture and religion, and there's literally no judgment. Beautiful group of women, very empowering, very strong group of people who just love to read. So if that's something that you're interested in, definitely check out P&G. After that, the next book that I read, which was specific to book club, was The Husbands. Now, this is the book that we read for the Overbooked Book Club, which I am helping run at this point in time, due to some changes in administration that happened. So I've been helping out with this club now for the past 4 to 5 months. We are primarily ran on Facebook. So if you are interested in joining that book club, definitely do look us up. And then once you join, it's free. There's no fees or anything like that. Once you're on, we basically try to meet every Wednesdays or Sundays, last week of the month, and we discuss a book. We do vote on our titles as well. So this was the contemporary fiction novel that ended up winning last month. And what I can say is this book, again, speaks a lot to social values. It talks a lot about our culture of instant gratification and having too many choices, which is really interesting. But the premise of this book is basically there is a woman who has an attic that's not quite functioning properly. The bulb has been acting weird. And so she happens to get back from her best friend's hen party set in London, bachelorette for those who may not know what that is. And she opens up her attic, and all of a sudden she walks into her home and there's a random man in her kitchen, and she's flipping out, and she realizes they're quote unquote married and he's her husband. And every time she sends a man up into the attic produces a new husband for her. So it's kind of that vibe of story. You learn a lot about her as a character. You learn a lot about loyalties. You learn a lot about the value of time. You learn a lot about how we make our choices, different versions of ourselves, all that kind of stuff. So I do think this is a really fun read. I did do a what I read in a week video, and I go into more depth about The Husbands in that video if you wanted to go check that out. But overall, I would say this was a solid 4.25 stars for me. I absolutely loved it. I think it was a very powerful commentary on society today. It's funny, it's poignant, it's entertaining, everything you look for in a fast-paced read. So would definitely recommend picking up Holly Gramazio's The Husbands. Next up, let's talk about Ashley Poston, because why not? Ashley Poston is one of my all-time favorite authors. She's written so many different books across so many different platforms and genres. She's done children's books, she's done children's fantasy. No, I shouldn't say children's, young adult. She's also done adult romance. She's done all kinds of books. And I've pretty much read every single book that she's put out at this point, I think, except maybe 2. But most recently, she put out a novel love story, which came out this past June, which is my birthday month. And so I had to pick up a copy of that. But I also realized I hadn't quite finished The 7-Year Slip yet. Now, if you guys are on Book Talk at all, this was blowing up the internet for a while when it first came out. And I personally started in this realm of her books, which is basically magical realism, I would say. She wrote the book, The Dead Romantics, first. Then it was The 7-Year Slip, and then a novel love story. And I think the thing I love about all of her books is it's genuine magical realism. Like, there are things that would never, ever happen, but just fun to think about. So in The Dead Romantics, it's about a woman who basically can talk to ghosts, and she's speaking to a man who is in limbo, essentially trying to quote unquote help him cross to the other side. Beautifully written book, very fun. Also goes through grief and family values, again, with that one as well. So loved that. The 7-Year Slip. Yes, Bella? My cat. Cat number 2. Who is the love of my life, I will honestly say. I love my husband, but I love my cat a lot too. The 7-Year Slip is basically about an apartment, a magical apartment that she has just, the main character that is, has just gotten as I'm blanking on the word, but basically her aunt gives her this apartment, which has been passed on to her on the untimely death of her aunt. And so she is reeling from the fact that her aunt has passed away and she doesn't know how to cope with the loss of someone so big in her life. And this apartment just happens to be magical, where every time you walk into the apartment, it shifts you back 7 years, either forward or backwards, most often backwards. And so during the course of this book, she ends up entering into this apartment, you know, really sad, trying to process the grief of losing her aunt, when all of a sudden she meets Ewan. And Ewan is just hilarious, fun, bubbly, young, upcoming chef. And then she also meets him 7 years in the future after that relationship has ended. So it's a very interesting, intriguing read. That's all I'm going to say about it. Solid 4.5 stars for me. Loved it. It's a ray of sunshine in a book. It will make you cry. It will make you laugh. It will make you feel all the feels, but it's a beautifully, beautifully written book and talks a lot about the value of trusting your heart, trusting yourself, you know, going after your goals, your dreams, your interests, as well as the power of love. And so I would say this is definitely a must read for me. Next up, I have a novel love story. Now this one was even cuter. I loved this book. This is like a 4.8 to 5 stars book for me. It's not quite a 5 stars, but on Goodreads, I rounded it up, gave it a 5. This book is adorable. This book is about a woman who is going through emotional tragedy because her fiance breaks off their marriage almost right before their marriage happens. She's reeling from that. Her best friend is getting engaged. She has a group of friends and they all get together and they just read rom-coms, and that's how she recovers from her breakup as well, is like work and rom-coms. And so she and her best friend had planned on going to a cabin for a trip in order to join the other rom-commers in their group to talk all things books. And her best friend had to bail on her for certain reasons. And so now she's sad, she's pissed, but she's also like there for her best friend. So she's like, I'm going to go on this trip anyways. Heads out and ends up, you know, having her car stall in the middle of this town. And she's just like, I've never heard of it. It's not on the map. What's going on? Meets this guy that she almost runs over in the middle of the road. A little grumpy, sunshiny vibes, you know, but a decent looking dude. And she finds out that this town happens to be a magical town that's stuck in time based on the books written by her favorite author, who unfortunately died very young because of a car accident. And that's where this book takes place. So it's basically about her running into this random stranger in this random town full of characters and full of stories that she has grown up loving, that have healed her heart. And now she gets to do the same for the town. Basically forward the clock and start time again. So absolutely beautifully written book. Loved this book. Would definitely recommend to all who love a good, happy, magical realism romance. And I think Ashley Poston just has a way of delivering these stories. I have not read an Ashley Poston book that I have not enjoyed. Some of them might have been slower. Some of them might have been more, you know, teen vibes. But these books in particular, absolutely adore these books and would recommend. Next up, Allie Hazelwood. All right, guys. So here's the thing. This book, 2 stars. I'm sorry. I like Allie Hazelwood. I support a woman in STEM writing, you know, romances and fiction. And that woman puts books out so fast. It's impressive. And overall, I would say I do like her writing style. I like the romance and chemistry created between characters. I like the overall creation of the characters in the book. This book I struggled with because I didn't care for the main character. She definitely has social anxiety and she doesn't know how to be around people. She's gone through severe trauma as a kid, you know, basically battling homelessness. So I do have a slight appreciation for where she comes from. Sorry about that. Where were we? Yes. So she has been through a lot where I do sympathize with her character, but she is a character herself. I just can't. And then the male lead character is basically described as very attractive, brutish, and they don't really develop feelings for each other till the end of the book. It's very, very physically driven book. And so I struggle with that. This has a lot of spice in it. Unfortunately, I was reading this on the plane heading to Madison for July 4th weekend, and I struggled. I had to put the book down at times, and my husband was poking so much fun at me because he's like, what the heck are you reading? And understandably. Like, this one was a lot, even for me. So lots of spice. So if you're not looking for spice, definitely don't pick this book up. But if you love Hazelwood, I don't think it's terrible. It's worth reading. Did it change my life? No. Do I have a lot to say about it? No. Did I love the chemistry between the characters? No. So overall, just kind of no. But that's why it's probably a solid 2 to 2.5 stars for me. There were some redeeming qualities to the books, but overall, I just was not a fan of any of the characters. I didn't really feel for any of the side characters either. So just really struggled with this book. We're just going to leave it there because I don't like to talk negatively about books if I can avoid it. So we're just going to move on. From there, the other books that I read were the Katherine Center books. Now, I did do a separate video reviewing these books as well. And I will say, this way, guys, this way. I will say these were beautiful. Now, the bodyguard is entertaining, fun, fast-paced, romance, very cute, very jolted vibes. The side characters are absolutely hilarious, so much fun to read. But it's basically about a female bodyguard who is guarding a Prince Charming, I'm sorry, I'm just gonna turn the volume off on that phone. But it's Prince Charming vibes, and he is basically trying to go home to be there for his mother, who's just been diagnosed for cancer, fix family drama that's happening between him and his brother, and he needs someone to safeguard him because he's been getting ridiculous threats from some woman who keeps saying that she's going to kidnap him and basically make him have, or basically help her have his babies, if you will. And so she's hired, and her company is hired to take care of him. She just got out of a really bad relationship. She just lost her mother. She's trying to just like get her life together. She's really good at her job. She wants to focus on it. She wants to leave, and her boss just won't let her. And so now she's stuck protecting this Prince Charming character, and they have to lie to the family and say that it is his girlfriend so that they don't get into trouble and they don't want to worry the family. So very, very funny premise. It's very entertaining. The side characters, like I said, are absolutely great. Such a fun read. Would strongly recommend. This was a solid 4-star read for me. The Rom-Commers was also absolutely hilarious. It's about a woman who basically is, you know, very well educated, a phenomenal screenwriter, but she has the primary job of taking care of her father, who had a very tragic accident where they lost her mother, and then the father becomes disabled and is still fully functioning mentally, but has severe reactions to hyperosmolarity or increased levels of sodium in his body. And so very, very specific diets, very easily can fall. So she's all about taking care of him, and basically has made it her priority to make sure her baby sister gets everything she wants, that she's always successful. Then an opportunity of a lifetime lands in her lap. She gets to work with Charlie, who is one of the most renowned screenwriters of all times in Hollywood, but is not known for romance. And apparently he writes a romance, and her friend calls her and says, you have an opportunity to work with him and fix the screenplay because it's absolutely terrible. And she kind of gets forced by her family to go to Hollywood and sit with him and basically rewrite the script. And fun facts, he doesn't know she's coming. So it's just a comedy of errors that take place. And then they end up essentially partnering up and writing the story together. And she happens to be staying at his house during the course of this time. He's also battling his own diagnoses, and he's also dealing with his own sense of grief and frustrations that she is unaware of because he is very close-chested and he's afraid of hurting her. But overall, just a beautiful love story, very fun to read, very entertaining. Again, solid like 3.8 to 4 stars for me. Then we have Hello Stranger. Now this one was incredible in my humble opinion. This was probably my favorite. It's a little bit sad, it's a little bit happy, it's a mix of all the emotions. Talks a lot about relationships with family, talks a lot about grief again. And I just think there's certain authors that do grief well, and she does grief well is what I would say. So this book follows the story of a woman who is basically a self-proclaimed artist who decided to give up the opportunity to go to med school and said, I'm going to be a painter like my mother. Now, she lost her mother when she was very young, and she and her father are basically estranged, and his new wife is basically her idea of, you know, Cruella, or the evil stepmother from Cinderella. And her stepsister is an absolutely horrible person who has done nothing but bully her and make her feel terrible and almost get her expelled from school and stuff like that, like a true bullying. and she just wants to paint. So she gets offered this opportunity of a lifetime to enter a contest where she has to portray a portrait, a realistic portrait. And in the midst of all this, she gets diagnosed with a condition where she needs to go in and have surgery, and it happens to be brain surgery. Fast forward a little bit, and she ends up getting a condition where she can no longer see faces. So now she's entered into the opportunity of a lifetime in order to paint a portrait, which is what she's known for, a portrait artist who can't see faces. Beautifully written book. Absolutely love it. The romance in this book is absolutely amazing. The relationship between her and her dog is so cute. And I just think it'll melt your heart. It'll genuinely just melt your heart. It's so worth reading, and it's just so much fun. And it made me feel all the feels. I love this book. This is definitely a 5-star for me. I would see myself reaching for this again and rereading it in the future. And yeah, just loved it. Loved it. And love the female lead. I think she's just so much fun to read. Then I read one thriller this month, which was The Midnight Feast by Lucy Foley. This book didn't quite make the mark for me, mainly because 65 to 70% through the book, I still didn't care what was going on. It wasn't until the last 30% of the book that I was really like, oh, okay, I like this book. And because of that reason, I'm going to give it like a 3-star. We'll just call it a 3-star. 2.85 to 3 stars, basically where I'm sitting with this book. I do think the female villain in this is very, very well done. I do think that the story of the 4 other characters that are helping tell the story of how things led up to where they did was interesting to read. I do think that the detective who's talking about the current situation and the body that's washed up was fun to read, his perspective as well. And I definitely enjoyed reading the diary entries to a certain extent about the past that kind of sets the plane for all the things that are occurring in this book. But overall, I feel like for a thriller, I want it to be fast-paced. I want it to move. I want to not be able to put the book down. I want to be on the edge of my seat, nail-biting. And if I'm not getting that feeling within 25 to 30% of the book, I just feel like a thriller hasn't done its job of being thrilling. I have read other Lucy Foley books, and I loved The Guest List. I loved The Paris Apartment. The Hunting Party was like meh for me, so I decided to pick this up and give this a chance. And I can honestly say that it wasn't quite there for me, but it's not terrible. So if you're looking for something fun, fast-paced, thrillery, this might hit the mark for you. Maybe you'll be more into the story than I am, but I do want to warn you, if you're looking for like a good thriller that keeps you on the edge of your seat nail biting, I don't know if this is the right one, but I do think the last, 30% of the book flies by, and that part is definitely fun to read when all the loose threads are kind of being pulled together. But it was just, that's kind of where I am with this book. Then I read these 2 beauties, Butcher and Blackbird and Leather and Lark. Now this is horror romance. This is dark romance. And I said I don't read those, but these were hilarious. I loved these books. These are about 2 serial killers that fall in love. It's following the Kane brothers. Kane brothers? Is that what they are? Hold, please. I want to say it's Rowan Kane. Don't quote me on that. It might be a different last name. But anyways, it's following Rowan and Sloane in this book. And then in this book, it is following Lachlan and Lark. So this is the middle brother's story of romance. This is the oldest brother's romance story. And I can't wait to read Fiona's story, which is not coming out till January. Kill me now. But it's called Scythe and Sparrow. And I'm so excited for it, especially with how this ended. But these books, I'm just kind of all over the place trying to talk about these books. They are amazing, like genuinely great. So basically, I just love the vibes of these books. In the first one, you have Rowan, who is a serial killer who hunts other serial killers, meeting Sloane, who is also a serial killer, killing other serial killers, and it's instant attraction. From there, it actually spans a few years of them kind of playing games and getting to know each other, letting each other in slowly, and going through this game where once a year they meet up and they hunt a serial killer, and whoever does the kill first wins. So highly entertaining, very fun, very fast-paced. A lot of depth to these characters too, which I actually enjoyed. And it's not just physical attraction, like they have genuine care for each other. And it's a little bit more vanilla than I was expecting. Now, there is a lot of spice in these books, but the nice thing is they're kind of focused together. So for example, in this one, you can definitely fast forward the chapters with spice. 16, 17, 18, I believe, and then 21, I want to say, are the spice chapters in this book. So you can skip those chapters and not have any real repercussions, or skim them if you want to get like the dialogue and the emotional depth between the two characters as they're doing whatever things they're doing. I skipped the scenes and I didn't feel like I missed out on the plot at all, but it is spice heavy. Same thing with this one. This one is also spice heavy. Again, the chapters can be skipped as well. I don't recall the exact chapters where it was high intensity spice, but let me see if I can find them and add them in the description for you guys. So if you are planning on skipping that, you can. I did do what I read in a week, and I talk about both these books in that video very, very much so in more depth. And I can honestly say loved these books, loved the plot points, and can't wait for the third book to come out. Never thought I'd be one to say that, but these were genuinely just hilarious to me. And then to wrap it all up, the final book that was read this month and completed, because I did start another book called Crimes Against a Book Club, which is really funny and entertaining, but I have not finished it yet. So when I finish it, that'll probably go in the August reads. But the last book, we finally made it through Magnolia Parks Into the Dark. And you can see all the lovely tabs. The yellows and the oranges are basically fashion comments. Blues are anything that BJ said that was specifically meaningful. Pink is anything that Magnolia said that was specifically important or powerful. And then purple is basically anywhere where I felt like there was a need to jot something down or a thought that I had that needed to be documented. I will say, Magnolia Parks in general, the world is so much fun and I love reading about it. These are very, very fictional characters. These are characters that have more money than any teenager or young 20-year-old should have, like billionaires who are all over the internet, plastered, like everyone follows them, rich beyond comparison. So a lot of things that happens to them, it's with that knowledge and that premise. Now, I will say Magnolia Parks herself was extremely irritating to me, books 1 and 3 in the Magnolia Parks realm. Daisy Hates, on the other hand, I loved both books from Daisy Hates, and I love the characters of Daisy, Julian, and Christian, and I've just had a blast reading about the three of them. And Jonah as well. I think Jonah is great, and Henry's great. Like, the box set is just great. But Magnolia herself has always irritated me because I think she's floundering. I think she's very self-centered. I think she's very irritating in general, and she has no real depth. But all of that came to a pause with this book because I think you get a lot more depth into her character. You get to see her dealing with grief, which is really powerful. There's something about grief in characters that just gets me. I think if a character can develop through grief, it is a very powerful thing to see. And so I did enjoy this one. This is the only Magnolia Parks book where I would say I gave it a 4-star. The first Magnolia Parks book was a solid 3-star for me. The second one was also 3 to 3.5 stars for me. This one was a solid 4-star. Now, both of the Daisy Hates books are 5 stars for me, and I can't wait to see the next one that Jessa Hastings puts out. But as this was the finale of Magnolia Parks and BJ Ballantyne, I think this book in particular spoke to me because there's so much that happens in this book. Emotional growth. There was a lot of intense moments between the two characters that was really beautiful to see. And so I would definitely recommend this book. I will probably do a more in-depth with spoiler potential review of the Magnolia Park series thus far, if anyone is interested in seeing that. But I truly, truly did enjoy this book, and I had a lot of fun reading it. It is a chunky monkey, so it took me some time to get through these books. But this one, to be exact, is 708 pages. And it took me like a solid week to finish this book. So physical reads this month were a little bit on the lower end scale just because the books that I tackled, one was extremely painful to read because the first 60% just dragged along. It was so slow. And then this book just took a long time because there's a lot of book in it. If you look at the books up there, those are the other 4 books on this corner, and you can see they are all significantly shorter than this one. So those books took me much less time to finish than this one did. But I'm hoping that the next Daisy Hates book, if it is the conclusion of Daisy Hates and Christian, which would be very sad, but if it is, then I hope it's just as big as this because those two, I can read about them forever. Hopefully even longer than this. I'm okay with that. But genuinely enjoyed the Magnolia Parks series. I can see where all the hype came from. It is definitely like reading Gossip Girl. It is a terrible relationship to base your own relationships on, but I think the growth that was shown by both characters in this book is absolutely beautiful, and it's definitely worth reading and enjoying. So if anyone has been nervous about getting into this book, especially after the ending of the third book in the Magnolia Park series, which was The Long Way Home, and I fully understand if you were devastated in the same way that I was at the end of that book, then just know that this book is beautifully written and it's a pleasure to read, and Jessa Hastings does it again. And that, guys, sums up all the reads of the month of July. They were lighter books. There were more romance heavy. There wasn't like too much intense books, like not too much dark academia vibes, or sometimes I feel like dark academia can be a little bit more in-depth books. Like The Secret History, I think it looks like there's a lot of meat to chew with that book, which is the book that we've selected for book club for August. So that will be on my TBR for August. Or like reading a classic, and I do think that these were much more fun, fast-paced, easy reads, which is probably why I finished them as fast as I did. But I do think that in general, it was just a great reading month, and overall, I was thrilled with all the books that I read. So would definitely say that it was a good reading month. For those of you who enjoyed these reviews and enjoyed hanging out with me today, definitely consider coming back if you're not already subscribed. That subscribe button and notification bell is waiting for you to hit it, and I put out videos every Wednesday and Sunday, and I appreciate your support. Also, if you're coming back to our videos today, my videos today here on Chpt's Corner of the Internet, I consider it an hour because it's a community here, and it's just so much fun to be able to talk to people who love books and have the same mentality around books that I have, which is just that they are a treasure and they deserve to be read. I know a lot of people are like, why so much fiction? Why not nonfiction? And I'm like, yes, nonfiction definitely increases your plethora of knowledge and gives you a lot of ability to navigate various situations in the world. And I do think there's a lot to be said for them. Don't get me wrong. But after going through medical school, I can't. It feels too textbooky. But with fiction, I think the beauty of it is you get to live 100 lifetimes in one lifetime, and you get to see so many different characters going through so many different various situations in life and emotions in life, and you get to feel those emotions with those characters, and it's almost like you get to experience it yourself. I think it opens your mind a little bit more, and I love the imagination and the creativity, especially when it comes to fantasy and things like that. And I think it's important for growth as a society to keep that imagination alive, right? Like if we had never thought of AI, then it never would have happened. When you look at George Orwell's books, or you look at Ray Bradbury's books from Fahrenheit 451 to others, like there's so much that they predicted to happen in society today, and a lot of those things, while not completely accurate, had some poignant points that we are facing as a society today. So what seems like one person's fiction may actually end up having a lot more value in the future. That being said, that was just my depth moment of the day today. If you are interested in continuing to subscribe and hang out with me, then definitely hit that notification bell and that subscribe button. Thank you again so much for spending like 50 minutes with me today, just talking all about books. Please leave your comments below. If there's anything you want me to read, anything you need me to put on the TBR, then definitely let me know. If there's any of these books that struck your fancy, if anything sounds interesting to you, then definitely let me know. But otherwise, I will catch you guys on the next one. Bye, guys.